Oops. I'm on the wrong thing. Here we go. Nope. There we go. Wasn't paying attention. All right. Oh, we already got 2 viewers. I love it. I love it. Glad to have you. Go ahead and throw something in the chat. Yeah. So my name's Sass. I'm running for Congress, and today I just want to talk a little bit about the complex world of gun reform. I guess I'll just dive right in. There are 40,000, over 40,000 gun deaths per year in the United States. More than half of those are suicides. And the reasons for those suicides are economic disparity, culture, mental health, or like lack of mental health treatment, whole long list of things. But the problem is addressing those is going to take a lot of money, people, energy, and most importantly, time. And in that time, we're going to continue to lose a lot of lives. And, death is a symptom you can't recover from. So the question is there anything that we can do that's quick and easy and simple right now to treat and mitigate the symptoms while we're working on the deeper issue of curing the disease? And the answer is yes. Simple things like universal background checks, universal waiting periods. These are some simple, quick, and easy things that we can do to take that 40,000 number down to 30,000 or 20,000 or 10 or 5. And if you're sitting there thinking, but you just said guns aren't the problem, or what if people try to commit suicide in a different way? Well, the method matters. Suicide with a gun is 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times more lethal than suicide with other methods. And that matters because when people survive a suicide attempt, over 90% of the time, they don't end up dying from suicide later on. They go on to live full, healthy lives. And so if you can remove the gun from the suicide equation, you dramatically increase the chances that that person is A, going to survive that suicide attempt, and B, go on to live a fuller, longer, happier life. And again, this is not a cure for the disease. It's not meant to be. It's intended to be harm reduction. That's the point. It's not supposed to get us from 40,000 to 0. It's supposed to bring us down. But that's short term, and we can talk about suicide on another day. There's also things like, there's also, of course, all sorts of different violence. Like I said, universal background checks will help to close like private gun show loopholes. Universal waiting periods will help to prevent the kind of what's it called? Mass murders mass shootings would help to. Sometimes we see those with quick turnaround times after the weapon is bought, so that can help as well. But that's short term. Long term, how do we deal with this gun issue? Well, guns are a community level problem. Hey TC, nice to have you. Guns are a community level problem, right? If you fire a gun in California, it doesn't kill somebody in New York. So I think gun safety, gun regulation can happen or even should happen at the community level. And so how I think what I want to do high level is empower the gun community to regulate itself. So right now, the gun community doesn't have a lot of say in how guns are dealt with. It's mostly just the NRA lobbying for these one-size-fits-all solutions for the entire country. That doesn't make any sense. Different communities have different needs and different desires. And so I want to give those in the gun community more of a voice. And so I think that this can be executed through through the empowerment of local, well-regulated militias to help form the regulation for their communities. So one way that this could look, an example would be, okay, let's say you want to get a firearm with a high muzzle energy of some kind, whatever it might be. Well, then maybe you have to join the militia, or at least go through some kind of safety training that the militia comes up with, or whatever it may be, and maybe some kind of certification or license or whatever it is, in order to get that kind of a gun. And if there are a lot of gun deaths in a community, then that local militia will be held accountable, and we can hold them accountable through the Department of Justice, right? Which already exists. We just need to empower the Department of Justice to hold those local militias accountable. And so I think this is a way to bring it down to a more community level. And I think that there should also be local and state mechanisms to help hold local militias accountable as well. But I think that this is a way that is compatible with the Second Amendment, right? A well-regulated militia necessary to the security of a free state. I think this is a way to handle guns in a way that is empowering for the gun community, while also empowering for gun owners who are fighting for gun safety, of which there are many. Because a lot of gun owners know that person down at the range who just really should not have a gun, and I think that putting the power in their hands is going to be a really powerful way is going to be a really powerful way to help create the regulation around it. And there would also be federal guidelines to cover the gaps, right? So if you're transporting from a weapon from one community to another, or communities that just decide not to have militias, that would be just happy with the federal guidelines or whatever it could be. But finding that balance, of course, is going to require input from voices in the gun community. When, like I said, they haven't really had a voice, and I would like to bring those voices in. I don't want to come down with the hammer as somebody who's not, a super huge gun enthusiast. I don't want to pretend like I know more about guns. I don't want to regulate the gun community from my own perspective. I want to bring in the voices of those who are gun enthusiasts. And so mixing all of this together, I think, is a way to really start to deal with the gun issue. And so this is kind of my stance. So like I said, I'm kind of short term and long term, and I think that this is a reasonable way. I think this is a workable idea. I think that's the way to put it. I think this is a workable idea. I've talked to some gun enthusiasts who advocate very strongly for gun safety. They've pushed back in some ways, but none of it is. They've never had anything that seemed like that has shattered the idea. It's always just kind of like, yeah, I mean, there's this issue, but maybe we could find to mitigate it in this way. And so I really do see it as a workable solution. In terms of size of militias, I think I would say probably the county level is probably the right level. So not like these big state militias, especially not these big state militias. Because in big states, again, it's about giving voice to those in the gun community at the community level. So I think county is typically a pretty good level. I'd be down to have mess with different sizes or whatever's right. I'd have more conversation about that, but I think that the community militias, creating regulation and then holding the militias accountable is a workable solution in the long term to dealing with gun issues. So that's where I'm at. Yeah. So TC asks, what is the difference between regulated militia and National Guard? So National Guard is like the regulated militia that the Second Amendment is referring to, and I'm saying let's go beyond that, because the National Guard, you could make the argument that you could only, depending on how you interpret the Second Amendment, that you could only have guns if you were part of the National Guard. So that's obviously not a lot of people would be happy about that, and I think it's reasonable to not be happy about that. So what I'm saying is, all right, so we only have the one well-regulated militia, and it covers 330 million people. Like, how about, I'm saying, like, let's have many small well-regulated militias rather than just one big one. I mean, we can still keep the National Guard around. I'm not against that. But I think having those smaller community level militias can be helpful, because it can help us to deal with the Second Amendment in the context of the 21st century with much more advanced weapons than what they had in the 18th century. That's really what it's about. Like the concept of protection against a tyrannical government makes sense, but also, like we saw last year, the National Guard was under the direction of the U.S. federal government. It wasn't under the direction of just like the people. So it's hard to say, like, how much is the National Guard even in terms of protecting us from a tyrannical government. They feel a lot about the tyrannical government. Hi, I'm gonna try to pronounce this. Shales Schwaran. Local militias because community governments is what it needs. Local governance is I think a really powerful way to approach this. Shale, glad you just joined. Today I was just talking about kind of how dealing with the gun issue, kind of short term and long term is kind of where I'm at. Short term, kind of treating the symptoms of disease. It's about harm reduction, quick and easy, simple things to mitigate problems. It's not meant to be the cure. And then long term, empowering the gun community to regulate itself through the empowerment of local well-regulated militias to figure out what gun regulation should look like on a community level, and have federal guidelines to cover the gaps, and holding those militias accountable for gun deaths, both through the Department of Justice and as well as whatever local measures need to be taken. So I guess that's actually a pretty good summary of all of my thoughts without going into the details. So that's actually, I don't think I've ever put it that concisely before, so that's good. I won't stick on too much longer unless y'all have something else you want me to talk about or you have questions. So U.S. back to normal. So I'm wondering, when you say normal, what do you mean? I'd like to have your interpretation of what you mean by normal. And TC, we'll definitely want to get this video downloaded. Definitely want to get the transcript from this one. Okay, you live in Andaman Islands, even though you know what's going on in the U.S. Yeah, I know. Around the rest of the world news tends to just be the U.S. Yeah, the mass shootings is huge, and actually suicides make up more than half of our gun deaths. Suicides are a huge problem as well. And as I was saying earlier, removing guns from the equation of suicide can dramatically reduce the actual death toll, because suicide with a gun is far more lethal than other methods, and when people survive a suicide attempt, the vast majority of the time, they don't end up dying from suicide later on. They go on to live fuller, healthier lives. Um, yeah, so universal background checks, universal waiting periods. Those are, I think, great ways to deal with it in the short term. Last time mass shooting happened in India was 2008 terrorist attacks. Yeah, the U.S. has a variety of gun problems. Mass shootings are definitely a problem in the U.S. And so you know, I do think that the best people to decide who should the people who have, let me put it this way, the people who have the best understanding of who should and should not have a gun are gun enthusiasts, are going to be gun enthusiasts, right? So I know that um, yeah, Andaman is in India. Yeah, there's no going back. Normal was dysfunctional. I mean, again, like, and this is why I was asking about, their definition of what normal is. Normal is, you did your CSE in University of Texas. Oh, okay, cool. I don't know what CSE means. I'm getting child sexual exploitation. That's not what we want. Yeah, let me see if you responded. Computer science engineering. Okay. Yeah, you saw some tanks in Texas. When was this? I believe you. I'm just wondering. You saw some tanks in Texas. Yeah. The what was that, like, police? 2018. What would that have been for? What was the event? Yeah, okay. So yeah, that is possible that was, we have a federal program where the federal government gives old military equipment to police departments. That needs to stop, just straight up. Police do not need military grade weapons. That's not okay. If you're going off about security of a free state, the police should not be having military weapons. Like, it's just not okay. It's not useful. It's not helpful. Like, it incentivizes the use of it. Like, so I don't know if if it was police, or if it was just like a one time, like, just a random private citizen who managed to buy a tank or something, which happens. Here, yeah, there's a lot of diversity in this country. That's what I'll say. But yeah, definitely this idea of, like, normal. I don't think normal exists anymore. I don't think it has for a while, but the pandemic killed that completely. And also, normal has not been working for a lot of people. I mean, certainly hasn't been working for poor people of any color. So that's why I'm huge about UBI and stuff. But obviously today I was talking about guns. Yeah. Well, it's super cool that you got your computer science engineering. I am wondering, actually, I guess, to shift the conversation a little bit. What was so are you back in India now? Well, yeah. So you said you're back in India. So I'm wondering, was that always the plan for you, or did you want to stay in America? I'd love to know, because this is an issue that people talk about all the time, about, like, trying to allow people who study and who come to America to study, and then aren't allowed to stay, and then are forced to leave the country, and how ridiculous that is. And so I'm just wondering if you're willing to share, what that was like. You chose to leave. That's fair. Yeah. Um, I don't know. Let's see, you said you were at UT. I don't know if you were at UT Austin. What do you think about the idea that we are in a great transition? We are absolutely in a transition. I think that we are in a perpetual. I think we've entered a perpetual transition. Um, well, there's a couple different ways to interpret the word transition. So let me tell you where my head's at. Oh, I'm not rich, so I take public transportation. Hey, we need a lot better public transportation here. Yeah. I want to address this transition thing though. Um, so something that has changed in the last century is this kind of like going from occasional or moderate change to constant change. The world is now constantly changing. Every day there's more new technology, more news items, more political shenanigans, more everything, and it's like it's a different mindset, and I think that that's one of the biggest gaps um, between younger generations and older generations in the United States right now is younger generations have grown up in this world of constant change, and it's what we're used to. Change is the norm. But with older generations, they grew up when change was much less frequent. And I think that dynamic has causes a lot of can sometimes cause conflict, or lead to conflict, may be a better way to put it, because it's just like this attitude of like, well, let's just change things, let's just make things better, let's just improve and progress and change all the time. Whereas with older generations, some people may feel like that the changing is just happening, like that's not how that's not what they're used to, that's not what they grew up knowing, and so it's that kind of ridiculous level of change. So I think that's like a one time, like that's I think that dynamic is unique to this particular gap of generations. It is really, the world has transitioned from everything's the same your whole life to nothing's the same on any given day, and I think that is done a lot. But let's take a look at these comments again. So I'm not rich, so I take public transport often. I'm not saying that everyone is like that. I think referring to the racism, but I don't want to take chances. It's fair. I know million Indians who live in Texas, but they're rich and their life is completely different. There's an intra-racial divide, definitely. I moved back to India to work in the government. I got a job in cybersecurity. That is amazing. We need a lot more people working in cybersecurity in the government in the U.S. right now. TC is saying change scares us, referring to yourself. For those of you who don't know, TC is I don't know how old you are, TC, but you're not as young as I am. I'll say that. But yeah, the U.S. government needs. Hey, we got some new viewers. To go ahead, throw something in the comment. We were talking about gun reform today, but now we're talking about societal changes and transitions. We're touching on racism a little bit. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name. Shales, I'll go with. But yeah, I totally understand seeing like, yeah, there are people who kind of in the U.S. were able to break through without whatever education they had or whatever profession that they went into, and the economic system kind of worked out well for them, but that doesn't apply to everybody. And of course, this is where the stereotypes come from. Is like, okay, well, there's folks like yourself who maybe aren't part of that other class of folks of Indian descent who maybe went on and like you said, who are who are rich and their life is completely different, as you're saying, but perhaps some of those folks came to America and then went back to India or went back somewhere else, and so that creates this divide, and then we only experience one side of that divide, which then leads to stereotypes, and then stereotypes lead to racism. So the human mind is vulnerable to these kinds of things. Our internal tribalism, really can affect us. And also there's another piece to this as well. which is that our minds are also vulnerable to destructive narratives when we're not secure in our basic needs and when we're in survival mode. Our brains don't really work right. And so this is about like shifting from mindset of scarcity to mindset of abundance, from scarcity mindset to abundance mindset. And so that's why I also push so hard for universal basic income. See, everything always comes back. It always comes back to universal basic income. It always comes back to voting systems and government accountability and directly addressing the division. The 4 pillars of my campaign. This is the reason. There's a reason those are the 4 pillars, because that's what everything always comes back to. Every conversation always breaks down into those 4 things. But really at the end of the day, it's about representing people. Like all of that even still breaks down into just like about having like the right representation, which is why I'm running. Well, it's one of the reasons I'm running for a lot of reasons, but that's one of the reasons. But hey, I was glad to have you guys in the chat today and talk and stuff. If you got nothing else, I'm gonna end my stream. Yes, thanks. Good to see you, TC. And I will, like I said, I really want to get this one transcribed. And so if you're not able to make it happen, I will download the video and just like send it to you in some way, and we will get the transcription. Because I think I got the words really right on this one, and I just want to get that up on the site under the policy.